My mom says my neighborhood school isn't good enough.
How am I supposed to know my kids are getting the best education possible?
Welcome to Good Schools for All, a podcast from the investigative news organization Voice of San Diego.
We cut through the jargon and polarized debate to get you the news and ideas that matter. Good schools are at the heart of our democracy and economy, and we're about good schools for all kids.
We hope you'll learn and maybe teach us something. Enjoy the show.
There should be an excellent school in every community.
I'm Scott Lewis.
I'm Laura Kohn.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, Scott.
So we got the call this week.
The call.
PTA wants us to get involved with the elections, maybe try to help lead.
You're being drafted.
Yeah, we've had some big conversations at the Lewis household about what we can juggle, how soon I can get home from work, that sort of thing. But we're gonna do our part, help out.
All right, good.
You know, I signed up to help with the boys' baseball league this year. It's a lot more intense than t-ball now, and
more practice time.
Yeah, it's
more
like,
intense
it's like
parents.
a part-time job. It's like a big deal.
Yeah.
The parents are fine, and the coaches are fine. The kids are great, and I love it. I don't know. There's been no better feeling to me than the little league field. You know, the only bad part is they don't let me play, but I just love the whole feeling. It's not insignificant. They're more competitive than we were at 8 years old or whatever, 7 years old. It's a much more regimented thing.
Yeah.
Like, so they're good too.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
You're winning some games.
Oh no, I mean the kids are good. Like we're probably among the not the best, but but it's just amazing the level of competitiveness and stuff already. It's just something else.
Yeah. So my thing with PTA was to let the parents who weren't working full time take care of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I think that what's happening this year, we have a lot of people in our own PTA that are like moving on or whatever. And so it's like
there's a little leadership vacuum.
Yeah, the problem with me is like in any leadership vacuum, I'm like, all right, what do I need to do? And then I'm like, well, I have a big job. I have a lot of other things going on. So it's hard for me not to do that. And so I'm not, but we'll see what happens. So I love what they're doing. They've helped create a good community. So speaking of communities, so we have done a lot of reporting on the Lincoln cluster, and I think that the southeastern San Diego area of the city of San Diego and this San Diego Unified School District is a one that has a lot of attention right now about all kinds of issues, from the issue of public safety in the schools to academic performance to all kinds of things, and charters are big in the area. Lots of different.
They are.
Pretty much everything we talk about really is concentrated in these areas. And so we have a special show today, though. We are going to talk to two different people who did two different things in the community. We spoke with first Karly Van Holten and her mother, Tia Turner, and you're going to love that conversation. How great was she?
She is amazing. So impressive.
So she's
going to rock the world.
Yeah. I love meeting kids like that. She was an Aaron Price Fellow. She got into, she went to Lincoln, and she's graduating this year, and she got into dozens of very impressive schools, and her and her mom are clearly very proud of that. And how they navigated the school choice decisions, the early education decisions, and just how they managed their experience at Lincoln, I think is just interesting discussion. And, you know, it's nice to, it's just a nice story. She's a very impressive kid.
Yeah, and her mom's passion and commitment, she was a super mom, the way you're contemplating being for your kids. And she's just really clear. She thinks that was necessary.
Yeah. And then we'll talk about our second guest for a second.
So our second guest is Gina Gianzero, and Gina runs the Diamond Education Excellence Partnership, which operates in Southeast San Diego, focusing on the early end of the education spectrum, so early childhood, pre-kindergarten, and supporting providers of childcare in that zone, and heading up into the early grade levels, working with several elementary schools down there. So it brings together a lot of partners, and it's a really terrific example of how to mobilize around the schools in the Lincoln cluster.
We are joined in the Great Voice San Diego podcast studio by Karly Van Holten. She's a graduating senior at Lincoln High School. Hi, Karly.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Thank you for coming. And her
Thank
mother,
you.
Tia Turner, is here.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, Tia. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Okay, so somebody referred this story to me and said you had an interesting experience, and I agreed. So you are graduating from Lincoln High School, correct?
Correct.
And you got accepted to a few dozen prestigious universities, is
Yes.
what I hear.
I've been accepted into 34 colleges and universities.
So that's a lot of applications.
Yeah.
So can you give me some of the highlights of the ones you were most excited about?
I was most excited about getting into Howard University, Xavier University, Creighton, UCLA, UCSD, UC Berkeley, UC Irvine,
Wow.
San Diego State, Grambling University. Just a lot of, it was kind
A lot
of
good UC schools there.
Mhm. I got into all my UCs. I applied to 4, and it was just a blessing and a great experience to be able to get into these schools and to be given the opportunity to apply to these schools, because I know a lot of students aren't able to apply to these schools. They apply like 4 schools, and if they get in, they get in.
So how are you going to decide?
I have decided, but it was an experience trying to decide, because most people thought they knew exactly where I was going to go, and it's not, but the school that I chose fits.
Wait, I'm not going to let you out of here without pushing you pretty hard on that. Can you tell us what you did? What you chose?
I can, in a sense, because I'm having a graduation party with the college reveal, so I can't necessarily tell you exactly, but I can give you a gist.
Okay.
I'm not going too far from home.
Okay. Good sign for UCSD.
I'm not going too far from home. My school has great academics, great sports,
Ooh.
not to give myself away, great food, and is in a great city.
All right. I'm gonna leave it at that. Sounds good for some of the Southern California schools, but not UCSD. They don't have much sports. They're getting a little better though.
That's true. Detective work.
Well, so we've done a lot of reporting journalism about Lincoln High School over the years, and obviously it's had a lot of changes. I used to volunteer. There was for years a Voices of Lincoln online news source. I tried to help them build. I think it's been abandoned with some of the journalism program that's been abandoned there. And you know, the school was rebuilt in 2007 and has gone through a lot. So what was your experience there? And let's finally hear some student voices on this. It'd be great.
My experience at Lincoln High School has been an experience, to say the least. It's an experience you wouldn't completely understand and wouldn't completely embody unless you were there. It's literally the quote, you had to be there to understand. But I feel like every aspect and everything that I've experienced at Lincoln High School has shaped me to be the person that I am, and I wouldn't trade it to go anywhere else, because I was supposed to go to Mater Dei because I received a basketball scholarship, and at times I would question myself, like, why would I go to Lincoln over Mater Dei when there's so much at Mater Dei that I can expose myself to? And at times I felt like if I would have went to a different school like UC or Point Loma, that I would have reached a higher cognitive capacity that I have. However, attending Lincoln High School has given me this community aspect that I would not have been able to achieve anywhere else. And at Lincoln, I just have, it, for lack of better words, a family. And I feel like at other schools, it would just be like, oh, you're in high school. Like, have fun being in high school, learn how to be a high school student. But I feel like at Lincoln, everybody, like, we went through everything together. Like, we are one, literally. And this whole, like, the experience of us fighting to get a new principal and everything, like, everything about Lincoln screams community. So it's just being a Lincoln student, not only did I achieve at the top of my class, but I also learned how to be a community and how to be one with others rather than just being a high school student.
Okay, so let's unpack some of that real quick. You said the community aspect. You brought that up a lot, that you wouldn't have had that had you gone out. What do you mean by the community aspect?
I mean, attending Lincoln High School is like most schools you go to, it's like, oh, there's the jocks, there's the cheerleaders, there's this and there's that. But at Lincoln, it's everybody is together. It's not necessarily like we have cliques and we have this and we have that. Honestly, we're all one big family. Everybody knows each other. Everybody speaks to each other. We say hi. It's not a typical high school experience.
Mm-hmm. And when you said you went through everything together, what are you thinking in your mind when you say that?
I mean, the oppositions that we face against the media, the oppositions that we may face between each other, the oppositions that we face in the classroom, us fighting to receive a new principal.
What was that like? Let's get into that. So there was a long search for a principal. The current one was put in as an interim, and there was a big movement to just make him permanent and give him that both that permanency and that confidence that comes with it. You were part of that effort, is what you're describing?
A part of experiencing it.
Okay. What was that like?
I feel like attending Lincoln High School, we learn a lot of civil liberties and like things like that. So it taught us how to have a voice without voting, like how to express ourselves and express what we want to people higher than us rather than just saying, oh, well, that's the cards that I've been dealt.
What did the students do to advocate around the principal selection?
We as a body, there were few walkouts, I believe. There was, honestly, I couldn't tell you much. I was in AP class, but I know that the people that felt that they wanted Mr. Soto to be our principal fought for that.
Yeah.
And they received that right. And it made the community and it made all of us realize, like, just because you can't vote doesn't mean you don't have a voice.
Yeah.
Tia, I want to bring your voice into this. You obviously, congratulations. I have 2 young children, and if they grew up to be anything like Karly, I'll be very proud. So what, as you're going through the process of helping her decide where to go to school and things like that, what did you keep in mind, and how much say did you have?
Well, actually, I'm a Hornet.
Okay.
I'm a Hornet from 84.
Uh-huh.
But like she said, I don't watch the news. I did not, because of the hearsay, and I'm a homeowner in the community.
Yeah.
So I know what goes on.
In Encanto, or?
I live in southeast San Diego.
Yeah.
On Solola, I own a home, bought a home 24 years ago.
Okay.
So I took her to Mater Dei, as she said, and the director walked out and he's like, we want her. He's like, I'll send you a letter, but we want her. Because there's not a lot of 8th graders that know what they want, especially females at this age. So I said, okay. She begged me, Mom, can I please go to Lincoln? She's my oldest. And I'm thinking, I don't know, Mom. So, of course, I go and it's summer. So I walk in and I ask Mr. Ross, John Ross. I know him I
remember Principal Ross, yeah.
And Miss Watkins. I walk in there in the summer and I said, can I meet with you? And they said, of course. So I said, my daughter wants to go, my exact words, my daughter wants to go here. What does Lincoln have to offer her? And they explained to me what there was at Lincoln. Aaron Price, she's an Aaron Price fellow. Amazing. I love Robert and Allison.
Yeah.
So I let her go and she took off from there.
Have you been in some of the sessions I was doing? At the stadium one?
We went to NBC?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah.
Now that you say something, I remember.
And then the aircraft carrier, were you on that one?
I probably was there.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
That's okay.
Aaron Price Fellow's a great program.
Oh my God,
I volunteer every year for him.
Amazing people.
Yeah.
The Rotary, she went to Europe. She went to Prague. The Rotary paid for it. Everything was free. I look at it as she's spiritually grounded. So she has her foundation. So it's like, okay, this is what they have. Go do what you need to do. And she did it.
So, Karly, why were you so clear-headed about the school choice? We do a lot of talking about how families choose schools, and it's so I'm really interested to hear why you were so sure that Lincoln was the right place for you.
I would say that I believed that Lincoln was the right choice for me because it's like it was in my community. It was accessible. It was something that I wanted to be a part of legacy-wise because my mom went to Lincoln. And it was honestly a legacy that I was born into, and it wasn't something that I wanted to just up and forget and up and leave. And like my mom said, she attended Lincoln High School. She was homecoming queen. I was homecoming queen.
Uh-huh.
It's just a legacy. It's something that you just do.
Do you have aunts and uncles who went there as well?
Yes, I do.
Cousins?
Yep, everything.
Yeah.
Thanks. So let me ask you, one of the things that we've been researching is that there was a school district administrator that came to the neighborhood and said to some of the parents and activists there that a lot of the kids graduating out of middle school were entering the high school at a second grade reading level. And there were sort of two reactions to that. One was, how dare you? That's offensive. But the other one is, if that's true, what are we doing about it? And why wasn't that a bigger deal? What schools did you go to as a younger student, and what was it like?
For elementary school, I attended Benchley Weinberger Elementary School, which is in Lake Murray area. It was the foundation of my education. That's where I learned like the importance of education, the importance of community acceptance, etc. And then I went to Millennial Tech Middle School, which was kind of like a culture shock because I went from Lake Murray to my local middle school, but it showed me both sides of the spectrum, and it was an experience in itself as well. However, Millennial Tech, it extremely prepared me for high school because I started taking high school math credits. I took my freshman year of math in 7th grade, my sophomore year of math in 8th grade. I took my freshman year of Spanish in 8th grade, and it was a school highly motivated to push the kids in our communities to be engineers, to be scientists, to be math majors, to be something outside of, oh, you live in Southeast San Diego. So my middle school helped to further my education and to help further my passion and purpose.
Did you go over to Lincoln for those high school classes, or were they offered
No, they were
campus?
Actually middle school classes. Like all the kids that were we spread out into, well, it was kind of corny, but it was rainforest, ocean, and something else. But all the 6th graders were split up into those major groups and then split up again. And we all had the same classes. So we went through middle school together. So we all had the same classes. And I'm not exactly sure how to call it, but Team Rainforest, we took like the highest level classes on campus, and that's where we basically took what high school explains it as honors. We took honors middle school classes, so it already pushed us. So going out of elementary school into middle school, I'm already thinking like this is how it's supposed to be, not this is accelerated.
Yeah.
So that honestly was huge.
Wow.
So it's Teacher Appreciation Week this week. Could you tell us about 2 or 3 teachers who have really made a difference for you, who helped you think differently, who helped you see your own abilities differently? Someone who really made a difference.
Starting from my youngest age, I would say I have a few teachers. But my first teacher would be Miss Harvey. I had her in 3rd and I had her in 5th grade. And she was honestly a positive, like it was always, I was always happy to go to school because I was like, oh, I get to go to Miss Harvey's class. And she had this special chair with arms on it and you get to sit and wrap yourself in the arms. It was just, honestly, 3rd and 5th grade were like the best grades ever. And I felt that in 3rd and 5th grade is when I grounded myself like, oh, I want to skip middle school. I want to go to high school, be a senior, and then go to college. Like, that's all I want to do. And I feel like that is exactly where my college readiness started. And then in 5th grade, I had her in 1st and 3rd grade. And then in 5th grade, I had Miss Hasselbar, and she honestly emphasized math and science to me. And We played 24. I was like one of the best 24 players. You could give me 4 numbers, I could make it into 24 in 0.5 seconds. Like, she pushed me to be the mathematician that I am. And going into middle school, all my teachers are great. My principal was the best principal, Mr. Neil. That's my best friend now, but he's honestly the best principal that I've had, because not only did he execute his principal duties, he executed as not like a teacher figure. Like, he was always there. He always was present. And it's one thing to be present with students and kids that are young, because once you're present and you're consistent, you show a consistent face. And it's something that as a youth, you're like, oh, I can depend on them. They're always there. I always see them. Maybe not, oh, I'm smart enough to think like, wow, I always see them. They're always there. But something subliminally is like, oh, I see them. They're there. I can trust them type thing. So Mr. Neal was huge to me. Going on into high school, I had Mr. Deere. And that is like the best teacher I've ever had. Like, not only was he relatable, not only was he just taught in a sense that was like, he taught, I don't know if you know this phrase, it's stay woke. It's like that, he embodied that in so many ways. And he was a teacher that was like, oh, I'm going to argue against you. I believe you, but I want you to show me that you know what you're talking about.
What did he teach?
Yeah.
English.
Okay.
Yeah. So Mr. Deere was huge.
Okay. So Tia, as in those early years, how did you navigate that? And if you were to tell a parent now who's trying to, get to this stage with their own, how would you tell them to make those decisions or advise them?
First thing I think as a parent is you have to go to school with your child. You can't just drop your child off at the gate and say, go to school, even in high school. I mean, from elementary up to maybe her 11th grade year, I have been that volunteer. Even right now, I'm the volunteer for grad night. I raise the money for them to go to grad night. I'll be on the bus. Teachers, they're teachers, and not all of them are perfect. Not all of them are bad, but there are some bad teachers. But if you know your teacher, if they know your face, then they're going to do, I'm not going to say more, but they know, okay, if I don't do what I need to do with this student, then I'm going to hear from that parent. I know the principals, like I said, Mr. Ross, call him on the phone. Mr. Ross, this is going down at the school on his personal cell. And he already knew. Willie Neal, Mr. Neal, I call him. This is what's going to happen. In her middle school year, I had this kid call her a bad word. We don't cuss in my household. So I called him. It was late. I'm like, Mr. Neal, I need to talk to you. What, Tia? Well, this such and such kid called my daughter this 4-letter word. He's like, Tia, calm down. That's what boys do in middle school when they like girls. So it was like, every one of Karly's teachers know me. And I knew she was going to say Mr. Deere. When I first saw him, it kind of spooked me. But he's just the most lovable. And he got Teacher of the Year one year for San Diego Unified. I think she even passed his AP test from his class. But you have to go to school with your student. You cannot depend on the teachers to get what you need to do. It's a triangle. It has to work 3 ways.
Yeah.
Me personally, I don't think teachers get paid enough. I honestly don't believe they impact lives, not one life, which is your child. They have lives to deal with. And not only do some kids come with issues to school, that kid may come with issues that you don't even know about. And that's maybe why the kid disrupts the class. Not saying it's okay, but that's what they have to deal with. And when they put the kid out of class, then it's like a surrounding door. So even in high school, I went to school where the janitor was like, I'm going to make you a parking spot. I said, okay, make me one because you're going to see me.
I'll let you go soon, Karly, but I'm interested. Let's say you were made king of Lincoln High School or queen. What would you do? What does it need?
If I was to be made queen of Lincoln High School, which I already see myself, but I'm just kidding. I would definitely emphasize the students there taking control over their academics and actually taking it serious, because I feel like as a student at Lincoln High School, being surrounded by other students at Lincoln High School, I feel like I am one of the few that actually care about their grades, actually care about going above and beyond, actually care about, like, okay, so say if I take multiple AP classes and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have a 4.0. And they're like, okay, and I'm like, no, I should have a 4.5. Like, I feel like more students should have that drive to actually excel in their academics rather than just survive in their academics. So that's one thing I would fix at Lincoln High School.
But what would you do as queen to motivate them? I'm the mom of 2 high schoolers, and so how do you tap into that motivation?
As a queen, I would create a system to where there was more one-on-one time, or maybe even group sessions with the students in order to say, okay, so what do you want to do with your life? Like, what do you think that you're going to get out of being here at Lincoln High School? Because you're going to be here every day for the next 4 years. So if you're here for every day for the next 4 years, and then the last 2 weeks of high school, you have to leave because you don't have enough credits, what was your point of being here for 4 years? Like, what do you genuinely want out of your education? And once they sit there and have that conversation and actually have their brains stimulated, then they're like, okay, so like, I do have to do this, and this is why I'm doing it, because I want to, not because somebody's telling me, oh, I have to graduate high school just because I have to graduate high school. Like, there's always a purpose in everything you do, and you should have a purpose and a passion in everything that you do. So I feel like if there was somebody, like, we have counselors, but I reach out to my counselor. Like, counselors have too much workload to reach out to somebody to make them care about themselves.
That's right.
So I feel like that's one thing that I would do.
Well, we need more students on the podcast. I think this is fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank
What are you
you.
going to study when you get into college?
Psychology.
Okay.
Yes. And then I plan to go to graduate school to get a master's and a PhD in forensic psychology, MBA psychologist, and juvenile hall.
Okay. Well, one thing I do know about college is things can change. I'm excited to see. I hope you stay in touch and let us know how things go.
Thank you.
I mean it when I say that. Whenever I see a kid like that, I guess she's not a kid anymore. Whenever I see somebody that has gone through the 18-year gauntlet that we call this stuff and is that impressive, I just look at the parents with a huge newfound respect. You know, like before I had kids, I would have never understood what it takes to get there, and what a joy it must be to see your child succeed like that.
Yeah, as the mom of a 17-year-old headed off to college, it is joyful, and it's also a little scary too.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to see how Karly does when she's out of her community and on her own, and will blossom in different ways.
What do you think about that? I've talked to a number of really high-performing students, and the ones that say they know exactly what they're going to do through college, what do you think about that? Like, I thought I did. Well, no, I didn't. But, is that a good attitude to have starting college?
Yeah, actually, it's interesting because my son doesn't know what he wants to do. If you ask him, he'll come up with some possibilities like political science or history, but he really doesn't know at all. And the college, so I've watched the colleges respond to that, and they welcome both types of students. They get both types of students, and most of them welcome both kinds. The one interesting thing, though, about the application process is that a bunch of the colleges require you to apply to a major.
Oh, really?
Yeah, including many of the public ones in California. So for my son, he just didn't apply to those schools because he felt so uncertain about what he'd be doing next.
I look at it 2 different ways. Like, one, my wife was a chemical engineering major when we met, and like I being in a sciences or engineering field had never even occurred to me. I was not bad at math, and I could have pursued that. And I think that for her, it was just something she started. Like, she had to know that she was going to go into that because you have to start the math right away and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I guess I wonder if there needs to be a little bit more emphasis on, like, if you want that path, you better start right away. You better have a little bit more clear direction. Otherwise, like, for me, it felt like I just sort of slalomed into, if it weren't for the campus newspaper, I'd be a complete disaster. But so I don't know. It's just something that came up when I was thinking about it.
I think what we have a responsibility to do as adults and as folks who run schools is to expose kids to lots of things that can ignite their passion, and to, as much as possible, connect what they're learning in the classroom to stuff in the real world so they understand not what their major might be, but what their life might be, that would cause them to pick one path over another. That doesn't happen as much as it should. We've talked a lot about that, and we want more of that. And so for some students, that's going to ignite something in them. They're going to start to clarify and pick a direction that they may shift off of later, or they might stick with it. But others, like my son, just nothing's taken so far.
Yeah.
Hopefully something
Did he
will.
pick a place?
Yes, he's going to University of Denver.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah.
I'm a Colorado native, so
Okay.
it's a pretty great place. I've heard a lot. They have a great hockey team. It's like-
Great hockey, great lacrosse, and great
Right.
ski team also.
Right. Okay, so speaking of exposing children to different things, there's one group we've come across that is trying to do just that, and let's hear from them.
Yep.
We are joined in the Great Voice San Diego podcast studio by Gina Gianzero. She is the executive director of the Diamond Educational Excellence Partnership. Welcome.
Good to be here.
So tell me a little bit about the Diamond Educational Excellence Partnership, otherwise known as DEEP.
Right. I'm going to call it DEEP from now on to make it a little easier.
Fair enough.
But in a nutshell, we are a collaborative of about 50 partner organizations focused on improving educational outcomes for children attending public schools in Southeast San Diego.
Okay.
And our big focus right now is on making sure that every third grader can read proficiently before he or she enters fourth grade.
Okay, I have a question about that, but let's keep going for a second.
Sure.
So it's kind of like a PTA on steroids, or?
Oh, no. It's, some people would call it collective impact.
Okay.
But some people like me don't really want to define it that way because that's a term of art that may mean different things to different people. But basically, we are a group of organizations that have come together to attack a very complex problem that has roots both inside schools and outside schools. So we know that the only way we're going to make a change is if we bring many groups together across sectors and put in place a continuum of supports for families and children at the early end of that pipeline, making sure they get into kindergarten prepared for success and finish third grade reading proficiently.
Okay, we talked about this earlier. We're basically talking about the schools that feed into Lincoln High School, right? Define the area and the focus you have.
So when I say Southeast San Diego, that is a large area. And I am referring specifically to an area that's called the Diamond Community.
Mm-hmm.
It got its moniker from the Business Improvement District that is in the shape of a diamond. But most generally, it refers to a cluster of about 10 neighborhoods that surround the intersection of Market and Euclid Streets in Southeast San Diego.
Okay.
And within that cluster are most of the schools that feed into Lincoln High School. And we are focused primarily on 4 elementary schools, 3 of which feed into Millennium Tech Middle or into a charter school, and 1 of which feeds into Knox Middle and then ultimately to Lincoln.
Got it. So a couple years ago, San Diego Unified School District Administrator went and caused a bit of a ruckus among some of the parents and some of the activists in the area when she said that there's just too many children going into Lincoln High School with only a second grade reading level. And it was a shocking point. And I think their point was, A, that's either really an awful thing to say about our kids, or B, if it's true, that's something we should all sort of have a managed freak out about, right? And so is that part of the kind of thing you're trying to address then?
Well, let's put it this way. Researchers tend to point to third grade as a line of demarcation in the reading process between learning to read and reading to learn. And so when children don't master things like phonics and word recognition, it's really hard for them to then comprehend in disciplines like history and science later on. And when we look at the data from schools in Southeast San Diego, and there are a number of tools for measuring that, we generally see that about 70% of those kids are not finishing third grade reading proficiently. And that, compared to kids in more affluent neighborhoods, I think is a pretty concerning thing. In more affluent neighborhoods, it's actually the inverse, where you have 70% or more reading proficiently by the end of third grade.
So let's get into that for real quick. So what does it mean they might be able to read a sentence, but it's not good enough or not adequate?
Right. Well, they establish grade level standards.
Sure.
So there are certain things you should be able to demonstrate that you can do in order to be deemed proficient.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you use a state standardized test, if you get a below proficient score, you are deemed not at grade level.
Got it.
But it is about reading, not just able to read the words off a page, but also to understand
Absolutely.
what you're
What
reading.
do they call it? Read with intent?
Read with intent, read for meaning, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
that is, after all, why we read, right? To get information. And so when children are so busy sounding out every word, every letter, it's hard for them to really understand what they're reading.
Sometimes I read a book and I'll forget the whole page that I just read. We're not talking about that, right?
No.
All right. So, and third grade, what we do talk about that a lot, right? That there's a sort of potential lifelong crippling thing that could happen if you don't solve that by third grade. Is that a fair description?
Yeah, crippling is harsh, but you're set behind, and it's really hard to catch up if you have that low level of reading at third grade, because the curriculum shifts so 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th grade teachers tend not to be particularly well prepared to teach children how to read. They're more oriented to the content that they're teaching. And so once you're behind like that, it requires that specialists are brought in to help you learn to read. Sometimes there aren't enough of those specialists. If there are specialists, sometimes they're taking you out of the content classes in order to help you do that catch up in literacy. So then you're missing out on important learning that you're supposed to be doing in science or social studies or math or whatever else it is. So that's what makes it so consequential and unfortunately hard to catch kids up.
So what do you do? So
DEEP divides its work into 3 strategic priorities. And the first one is what we call Ready for Kinder. And that's focused on making sure that children have enriching early learning experiences so that they enter kindergarten prepared for success. Because this all doesn't suddenly happen at third grade. The second strategic area is reading by third grade, and that means mobilizing resources and supports around principals, teachers, parents, and families at our partner schools. And the third area is what we call beyond the classroom, and that refers to providing extended learning opportunities beyond the school day to reinforce and build upon what you've learned during the school day. So we think that all 3 of those things need to happen in order for kids to be successful by the end of third grade. But we do a number of specific things directly in schools, only with the very close cooperation and invitation of the principal. And some of the exciting work that we're doing in schools is with our institutions of higher education. So we work closely with San Diego State College of Education, Department of Child and Family Development, and we're working closely with UCSD's California Reading and Literature Project. And both of them are working on teacher professional development and really helping teachers to be able to target quickly what a child is struggling with so that they can address it and move on. What you don't want is your child, Billy, is struggling with silent E, and the kid next to him doesn't know what sound K makes. And then all of a sudden, Billy and the other child are put in the low group when they have very different needs. And that doesn't really help Billy accelerate and get where he needs to be, right? So we're trying to help teachers identify quickly and then do something about it and move that child so that he accelerates beyond the low group.
What does that look like practically on the ground for some of these schools? Are you having meetings and I mean,
Well, DEEP doesn't do direct implementation
Okay.
in most instances. So we have our partners who go in, they will provide learning institutes for teachers. And then because a learning institute or a workshop isn't really sufficient to change practice, we follow that up with a lot of coaching of teacher teams when they get together to plan lessons, classroom observations, and it's all done by the experts. We ask them to give us feedback on how teachers are doing, and of course, we look at student outcomes to measure progress. But it's a long process because you're first changing knowledge, then you're changing attitudes, and ultimately you're changing behavior.
Of the teachers
Of
you're
the
talking?
teachers, right.
Yeah.
And until you change teacher behavior, it's hard to have an impact on what's happening with children.
There will be no impact on what's happening with children until teachers change their behavior.
Right.
So let's talk about that. One of the problems a lot of these schools face sometimes is a lot of turnover. So are you just constantly on a treadmill and just trying to keep up, or are there more long-term things you can implement?
So we do struggle with issues that anyone working in this field would struggle with. And so there are, without a doubt, variables over which we do not have control. There are, yes, instances in which we train teachers and then the district has a big retirement plan and all the teachers move to different places. We lose some who go to other places. The new ones we train don't necessarily have the seniority to stay there the next time there's a post and bid. So we absolutely deal with those things.
That's not a hypothetical. That happened.
That happens, and we are hoping it doesn't happen this year. But that is a reality. We think we've trained a core of teachers at some of our partner schools so that it's more systemic. There are enough teachers there that this is the way things are done. And if you have a really strong principal who's able to put processes in place, new teachers can quickly come into that. So it doesn't take a whole lot of bringing people up to speed. But the one thing that we do is that every single year when teachers are new to the early grade levels, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and third grade, where we focus, we invest to train them in those original workshops that the teachers in those grades that have been there longer have gotten. So we're really all about consistency. And I do think that is one area where we have a bit of an advantage in that we can choose, if we can raise the resources, to concentrate and sustain our investments in a way that perhaps a school district that's dealing with a lot of budgetary issues or pressures to deal with other areas can't.
So, Gina, you're an independent nonprofit, DEEP is, that is working really in an interdependency with the schools in the Diamond community. How does that relationship with the schools go with the school district? And what ideas do you have for other nonprofits that might be trying to work closely with schools like yours does?
Well, fortunately, we do have the school board trustee for our area and the area superintendent. They both serve on our advisory board, and so they're part of a lot of the discussion around what we're doing. But we only push on open doors with respect to the principals. We need to do things with schools, not things to schools. That's something the superintendent is very clear about, and we agree with her on that. So when principals come to us and say, these are the pieces that we want to work on, we try to figure out how to make that work. But we're also wedded to a theory of action. And so we talk about what the research says we should be doing, and ultimately we come to a decision about what's best for that school site. But there are instances where we've actually invested in a school, trained teachers in a school, had the leadership change, and literally lost that school to our process.
Where do the funds come from for this?
So the funds primarily come from the philanthropic community.
Mm-hmm.
I am indebted to the Jacobs Family Foundation and the Parker Foundation for their consistent support of our role in bringing together these partners.
You're actually at the Jacob Center, right?
Right. We're an independent nonprofit, but we actually rent offices in that building.
Mm-hmm.
And so it enables us to be right there in the middle of the community where we're serving. We were incubated in the Jacob Center, so we were at one point working within that organization through a fiscal sponsorship.
When did it launch?
So the entire effort really began, well, the very beginning, I'd say about 2010, when I first did research on the state of education in Southeast San Diego. And then we began pulling community leaders around the data to reflect on what, if anything, should we do about it. And from there, we really evolved into a group that felt we were committed to try to do something. So we emerged with a common understanding of the problem, which we say are leaks in this pipeline that run from cradle to college and career. And we focus on stopping those early leaks.
What have you seen change since you started researching there?
Well, I did the research, and then out of the research came this entire collaborative effort. So the research led to the understanding of the problem and some idea as to where we might go to address it. In terms of what I've seen,
has it gotten worse?
Well, what's gotten better is that we have 50 partner organizations now that are part of this effort. And when you ask, has it gotten worse, I would say in some ways it's gotten better. We track cohorts of students who have been in the schools that we serve. So we have a 2015 cohort of kids who were in first grade that year and a 2016 cohort of kids who were in first grade in 2016. We have another one this year. And we are seeing substantial improvement on the phonics foundational skills piece and fair improvement on the reading comprehension. Mm-hmm. So those are both good things. We see more improvement at some schools than others, but I do think we've seen a great desire to collaborate and an openness and a willingness to want to build relationships. We have a group of nonprofits that work with us around the early end of the pipeline, and organizations like Words Alive come in. They give workshops on campus in family literacy. First 5 providers come in and give workshops to parents. Rady's Children's Hospital comes in. They do the same thing. We have 150 parents across 4 schools that have taken the 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten challenge, and we've got close to 80% of them who are actually reading books. Several of them have reached the 1,000 this year. I think we're up to 5 or 6. Mm-hmm. And so we're seeing exciting things like that. We also have a cohort of family child care providers that we have convened now 7 times. And all of the partner organizations volunteer their time to provide training in how to bring STEM into your child care organization, how to teach reading through play. I mean, these are wonderful opportunities for the family child care providers in the community to do things differently with the children in their care, and by differently, things that will, we hope, prepare them for kindergarten. So we're seeing change in that respect, and we are seeing change in the implementation of these instructional practices in our partner schools, but change takes time. And I have to say that we always struggle to fund the work, to fund the actual programs, and in many cases, a program that have initially targeted K-3 gets trimmed down to be targeting maybe just 3rd grade. Mm. We still keep the work going, but we've had to change it every year.
So, Gina, we have you in here in May because we wanted to zero in on summer programs and the work that DEEP does to help prevent summer slide. So can you share what summer slide is and then what DEEP does to help prevent it?
Sure. So summer slide refers to basically a loss of learning that takes place during long school breaks. And what researchers have shown is that children in lower income communities tend to suffer more from summer slide and actually can fall between 2.5 to 3 years behind their more affluent peers simply because of the summer opportunities they lack during elementary school.
The camps and stuff.
Right. The camps, the exposure to museums, the trips, all of the things that children like mine were doing during the summer. I always spent more money and more time in the summer trying to figure ways to keep my kids learning. And what we see in the communities that we're serving in Southeast San Diego is that many kids, because parents are working, are home with grandma or older sister, playing video games, watching TV, eating junk food, having limited exercise. And so what we try to do is make sure that doesn't happen. Now, because we don't have infinite resources, we're very strategic in how we plan for summer. We use research out of the National Summer Learning Association to guide the design of our program, and we offer it to rising second and third graders. So those would be children who would be entering those grades in the fall at our partner schools. And it's started out as a 6-week program, and then it became a 4-week program, and I'm hoping to get it back to a 6-week program. We are now embedding it within the Primetime Summer Program that is funded through the 21st Century Grants, and that enables us to leverage a lot of funds that are already being used to provide facilities and staff, but then we bring in a layer of literacy supports, field trips to outdoor science labs, circus activities, and dance linked to literacy. And the research shows that all these kinds of enrichment activities are pretty critical to making this an experience for these children that will ultimately empower them. And an interesting fact about literacy is that the greater your background knowledge, the more extensive your world experiences, the more vocabulary you're exposed to, the greater context you have for anything you read. So when we're teaching kids about what the circus does or different kinds of dance modalities, it's building vocabulary and understanding that they may come across in things they read.
Well, Gina Gianzero, thank you so much for coming. It sounds like a interesting project. If people want to learn more, what should they do?
So every summer, we struggle to raise the funding to pay for the literacy teachers and all of the activities that we offer these children. And so I would hope that anybody who's interested in this, and let me just point out that these children in Southeast San Diego now have a 10-week summer. When the school district changed its calendar from a primarily year-round to traditional, all of the elementary schools in Southeast San Diego faced a over 10-week summer, more than double what they used to have. So if you're interested in helping us provide these kids with these kind of opportunities, I encourage you to visit our website, www.deepsd, so DEEPSD.org, and you can see what we do, and you will have an opportunity to support the work.
Okay. Gina, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks, Gina.